everyone, welcome back. We are now moving into the Romantic era, but the Romantic era, you have to understand, didn't just happen as an instant transition from classical to Romantic. No, we have a composer that we need to thank for more or less being the bridge that took us from the classical era to the Romantic era and being perhaps one of the most influential composers of all time. Yes, Ludwig von Beethoven. So let's dive right into him, and then we'll build off of what his work was as we go into the Romantic era. So here we go. So we are now in Earth's history. We are in the late 1700s, moving into the early 1800s. And this is a time of revolution. There's the American Revolution, of course, that happens. Then that's followed by the French Revolution in the late 1780s. There's the Industrial Revolution. There's the French Reign of Terror. Napoleon comes to power, and he literally takes captive two different popes. Pope Pius VI is taken captive and dies in captivity. And for those of you that are paying attention to Revelation and Prophecy in your Bible classes, this is the deadly wound spoken of that then later heals. He also takes and arrests Pope Pius VII, but, you know, he makes it out all right. So anyways, this is a time of revolution, it's a time of great change, and it's also a time of musical revolution. So the man that revolutionized music most during this period, again, it's Ludwig von Beethoven. Now, the painting that you see on the screen, this is a picture of Franz Liszt at the piano, who's a very famous Romantic-era composer. And there's other composers there with him. There's Berlioz and Dumas, if I remember correctly. And they're all sitting there. And who's that bust of on the piano but Beethoven? And the point this artist was making, and correctly so, is that Beethoven's influence cast a long shadow through the Romantic era, as we're going to see. He standardized a lot of things that came to be accepted as the norms during the Romantic era and expanded the idea of what the symphony could be. He was very ahead of his time for thinking opera was going to be coming back in a big way, which Wagner's The Ring Cycle, like, let's spend like literally our entire day watching opera kind of thing. That definitely happened. So, anyways, so Beethoven was a big deal, and he, like I say, he's considered the bridge from classical to Romantic, and on the screen that was backwards, I'm sorry. He was a pianist by training, way to go. Born in 1770, died in 1827. He studied with Haydn. He was familiar with the work of Mozart, but due to his deafness that increased throughout his lifetime, he made most of his money as a composer and not as a performer. His music is divided into three eras roughly, and you can make some adjustments to this as you want. But the first era, 1770 when he was born to 1802. And you're going to find that this is kind of his early era where he was just kind of feeling his way out and finding his own voice under the influences of Haydn and Mozart. 1803 to 1814, this is his second period, and this is where we see him paving the way for the Romantic era with the styles and forms that he's developing. And this is where he becomes quite popular too. His music becomes quite known throughout Europe. And then the third period, this is from 1815 approximately to 1827 when he died. This is a period where his music is more technically challenging and a little more difficult for listeners to interpret as well. But we'll get into that a little later on. Today we're just going to focus on music from his first period, and we're only going to do a little bit of listening. This is going to be a short presentation today. Now, when Beethoven was a child, he studied music initially with his father, and again, he was trained as a pianist. When he was in his teens, he moved to Vienna. This is also where Mozart lived for most of his career. And he studied here with Joseph Haydn. Now, you remember Haydn is the musical jokester from the classical era, who was also incredibly respected throughout Europe at this time, just basically a living rock star. Haydn invited Beethoven to study with him after Haydn heard some of Beethoven's piano compositions and some of his improvisations. He was extremely impressed. So Beethoven went and studied with him. Didn't last long because Haydn then took off for London. But Beethoven made his way through Vienna. He was supported by wealthy patrons. He taught piano students, and initially he was giving some concerts in this earlier period of his life. and this is how he was supporting himself financially. His piano compositions were both a mix of serious and popular. And what I mean by popular is music that was easier to play, that was more accessible for your amateur players and, well, it's a little sexist, but for ladies to play, because ladies weren't expected to become professional musicians. And this allowed him to extend his reach to a larger audience and increase his popularity, and subsequently his income. But of course, this is a double-edged sword for any composer. If you write too much cheesy, easy stuff, people are like, you're not a real composer, you're not serious, you don't get much of a reputation. Whereas if everything you write is brilliant, but no one can play it, you don't make much money. So it's a fine balance that composers have to find. So some of Beethoven's piano sonatas, and we remember the sonata form, you've got exposition, which has theme 1 and theme 2, with theme 2 being in a contrasting key, usually the dominant, but it doesn't have to be. Then you've got the development in the middle, which is like, let's play around with stuff and just do whatever for a little while. And then you've got the recapitulation, which is theme 1 and theme 2 again, but they're both in the same key this time. And you might have an introduction, you might have a coda, and you might have what's called bridge material, which is just like, it's not a theme, it's not independent on its own, but it links one part to another. So, anyways, piano sonatas. These were considered to be somewhat, some of them were considered to be technically difficult to play. This is an era, though, where some of Beethoven's most beloved keyboard compositions come from, because this is primarily what he's writing for right now. His Moonlight Sonata is written in 1802, so that's right at the end of this era. And then there's his Sonata Pathétique, which was written in 1799. Both of these exemplify Beethoven's very dramatic style. You're going to hear the drama in his dynamics, his rhythms, the dark dissonances that resolve slowly. Very passionate music. And he also gives kind of thematic ideas in the names. Sonata Pathétique. Pathétique means pathos, sort of with emotion. So what I'd like you to do is to listen to the first movement of his Sonata Pathétique. And I want you to listen to the whole thing. This is the Allegro di molto con brio, which Allegro is fast, and di molto con brio means with much energy or passion, because this is Beethoven's, what he did. I want you to try and distinguish between where you hear, first off, there's going to be an introduction, just so you know. But then, there's going to be a theme 1, some bridge material maybe, theme 2, and that's going to all be repeated. There's a repeat, and that'll help you with distinguishing where one thing ends and where the other begins. There's a development, and then you're going to hear theme 1 and theme 2 come back. Theme 2 will be different this time because it's in a different key. And then you're going to end with bridge material, or with a coda, which is a tail. So I'm going to give you a hint. The repeat's going to give away where the development basically begins. So that's going to help you if you're following the video, and so forth. We talked through the theme and the order. I'm going to give you on the next slide what my analysis is of the form of the piece. I'd like you to do one of two things. Either don't look at that slide yet and do your own analysis and see if we match, or go on to the next slide, then play the piece and follow along and see if you agree with the distinctions I made. I may be a little off on some of the measure numbers because the scores that you're going to find on IMSLP, which I would encourage you to use, don't have measure numbers on them. So I did my best to count, but I may have gotten off a little bit. But find a score on imslp.org. Look this up, Sonata Pathétique. Look up the first movement and follow along on the PDF and see if you agree with me where I made the division. The video also is going to play the score. So listen to it, come back, or go to the next slide, pause this video, listen to it, follow along, and then let's keep going. So what I have here is my own personal analysis of that incredible, incredible first movement. If you look at it, it's fluid. You could make some arguments that you might disagree with some of the assessments that I made, and that's the beauty of form and analysis. You can make your own decisions. You'll notice measures 1 through 10 was marked grave, that's slow, somber. That's the introduction. Then measure 11 through 26, where it's marked allegro. This is the exposition, theme 1, and it's in C minor, 3 flats. Measure 27 through 50, I marked as bridge material. Beethoven does a lot of bridge material, a lot of codas. This is kind of in G major, which is the dominant, and it's taking us to E flat minor, which, you know, for my theory people out there, E flat minor, E flat major is the relative major to C minor, so E flat minor is in some ways a related key. 51 through 96, this is exposition theme 2. So this is that dun 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 dun. That's that part. This is in E flat minor, and it closes in E flat major. And because it's in a very distinctly different key here, this is why I argue that this is theme 2. Whereas you could argue that the bridge material is kind of a related key. So then you go measures 97 through 140. I argue this is closing material. You could argue that this is the second half of theme 2. The theme 2 is just a longer theme, and we could call this 2B. It's E flat major, flirts a little bit with A flat major on the way, which would be the relative minor to the parallel major of C minor. Yay. Sets us up for a repeat. And then we go do all that again. 143 to 146, it's the introduction again, it's tempo 1. So this, obviously something's changed here. We're getting ready for the development. So then we get into the development. I've marked that as 147 to 205. This is Allegro. It's playing with some of the rhythms and ideas that we had in the first half. I think it's very obvious, though, when you get to 206, it's just like measure 11. We're back to theme 1. So we're in the recapitulation now. Theme 1 in C minor. 222 to 231. This is why I argued for this long bridge section, because you'll notice this section is shortened here. It's only going from 222 to 231. It floats around, but ultimately lands on that C minor. Da 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 da. C minor. And we're in theme 2. That's why I argued that that was bridge material in the first half. Then we're in the theme 2 of the recapitulation. We're staying in C minor. And 264 to the fermata. This is that closing material again, or you could argue theme 2B, whichever way you want to go. And then after that, we have some material that reflects the introduction, and we have what's called a coda. This is a term I want you to know. Coda means tail, and it literally refers to the end of a section or the end of a piece. So I know that was a lot of information, but this helps you to listen to music and to detect patterns and to go, oh, that's what the composer was thinking. So there's our analysis of Sonata Pathétique. Let's move on. All right, so like I said, this will be a shorter presentation today. We're on to one more listening excerpt. Tomorrow you're going to start doing a lot more listening. We're going to be spending a lot more time looking at Beethoven's life. We're going to look at how he dealt with his deafness and the incredible letter that he wrote to his brothers when he was considering suicide, but the incredible music that came out of that experience as well. You'll be introduced to more music, and you're going to start on your quizzes getting questions where I'm going to have excerpts for you to listen to. And it's not going to be identify this piece, because you could look at the YouTube title and do that. But it's going to be something probably along the lines of, okay, what section of the piece is this? What tempo is this? What do you hear that represents this style? Listening to this, how can you tell that Beethoven wrote this? You know, you might get some stuff like that. So be familiar with these general things that I'm sharing with you. So around 1800, Beethoven begins writing string quartets and symphonies. Now he kind of waited because he wanted to be real comfortable with his composing. Because remember, Haydn was around, and Haydn was a rock star, and he knew he was going to be directly compared to Haydn if he started writing this. Beethoven's writing style was obviously influenced by Haydn and Mozart, but his passionate themes, his rhythms, and his dynamics was all his own. What I'd like you to listen to is the scherzo. Scherzo is a form of Beethoven string quartet in B flat major, opus 18, number 6. Whew, say that 5 times fast. Scherzo, I believe it's the 3rd movement of this. And what I want you to listen to, it's hilarious because you think you know where the downbeat is, and then he'll move somewhere else and you're like, oh, I was wrong. So you're trying to count along, and it's really hard because you won't recognize it at first. The whole thing is in just a straight 3/4 time, but it starts on a syncopated pickup, which just throws you off for the whole thing. But follow the score if you'd like. Then you'll see what I'm talking about. The video that is on YouTube that you're going to be linked to has all 4 movements in it. But if you to listen to just the scherzo movements, start the video at 12 minutes and 48 seconds. On Spotify, the correct video is already, or the correct song is already chosen for you. So take a listen to this, enjoy, and I'll see you tomorrow.